Welcome to the GCSE Statistics Higher Session 2. This session is focused on sampling and consists of 6 subsections: sampling versus a census, questionnaires, pilot surveys, random sampling, stratified sampling, and systematic, cluster, quota, and convenience sampling. First, taking a look at the definitions between sampling, consensus, population, and sampling frame. A population are all of the members. We could have a population of a class, all the students in a particular class. A population of a town, all of the residents that live in a particular town. A sampling frame is a list of these populations, and this is where a sample can be taken from. So if we were talking about the population of a class, the sampling frame would be a register, a list of all the students in that particular population. When looking at a town, a popular sampling frame is the electoral roll, because all of the residents will be listed on the electoral roll to be able to vote. A census is when you ask every single member of the population, whereas sampling is only asking a subset of the population and then taking their answers as representative of the entire population. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages of sampling and censuses. We need to know the difference between these two. First off, the difficulties of a census. A census takes too long. It's a timely process to ask every single person in the population. Costs associated with a census also. Sometimes it's just too difficult to ask every single person, and in many cases impossible. Also, carrying out a census can be inconvenient. Now, sampling overcomes all of these difficulties and is often chosen in preference to carrying out a census. However, there are several advantages of a census, and in some cases it's necessary to carry out a census. First off, there is no bias in a census, as everyone's views are considered, and therefore the information collected must be representative. It is accurate. Example 1. We're asked, what is a census? So using the definition from our previous page, a census is when we ask all the members of the population. We're then asked to give 2 reasons why a person may take a sample rather than a census. So this is looking back again at the previous page. A sample is quicker, cheaper, easier. Any of those reasons for why we take a sample rather than a census. Looking now at questionnaires. There are 2 main ways that this question can be asked. Firstly, criticising a questionnaire. Now, in a questionnaire, you need to look for bias. A leading question. This is a question that suggests a particular answer. For example, do you agree that Liverpool FC are the best team? Do you agree? It's forcing the person to think that they agree. Therefore, we call it a leading question, and this is biased. Another way a question can be biased is assumption in the question. Why do you think Liverpool FC are the best team? They're assuming that you think that Liverpool FC are the best team by phrasing the question in this way. Now, an open question is also problematic. If, for example, we have a survey of 100 people, all of who give a different answer, it is not a lot of use. So, for example, what do you think of homework? And people respond in any way they would like. You're going to get 100 variations of answers, which is going to be very, very difficult to process and analyse. So the questions need to be closed. Closed questions are much better. So, do you like homework? Yes, no, don't know. So one way of closing a question is by giving response boxes. Another common criticism with questionnaires is that no time periods are given. A question may ask, how many pizzas do you eat? Very, very difficult to answer. You need to be more precise over the time period. How many pizzas do you eat in a day, in a month, in a week, in a year? There must be a time frame here, and then also some response boxes. However, often the response boxes are wrong, either because there are gaps or they're overlapping. Now we'll look at some questions in a moment that will have some things wrong with it, and you will need to state the reasons why this questionnaire is not a good questionnaire. The second way that this question can be asked is asking for you to improve or write your own questionnaire. Make sure that this consists of a question and response boxes. So first off, you need to keep it simple and to the point. Really, really important. Often the question is embedded already in the information provided. You've got to make sure it's a closed question with 4 or 5 response boxes. And make sure that every possible response is covered with no overlaps. So this means that there's an option for 0, there's an option for more than, etc. So closing the question with 4 or 5 response boxes is really important. Example 2. Ashton Girls' School wants to take a sample of 100 of its students to find out what they think about compulsory games. There are 5 year groups in the school. Each year group has the same number of students. Ashton Girls' School wants a sample to be representative of the whole school. One question on the questionnaire is, do you agree that compulsory games are good for you? This question is biased. Give a reason why. We can see here from the language, do you agree that compulsory games are good for you? This is a leading question. It's asking, forcing, asking the person to agree. So this here is a biased question. It's a leading question asking the person to agree. Now, it is suggested that it might be better to interview the students rather than asking them to fill in a questionnaire. You're asked then to state one advantage and one disadvantage of interviewing the students. So if you interview the students, one of the key advantages is that you'll be able to explain the questions. So in case someone doesn't understand what the question means, you can explain what the question is. Also, a further reason, we only need one, but a further one would be that it ensures all the questions are answered. If you are there asking the questions, no one will leave any blank. So that's really important as well as a second advantage. However, if you're going to interview all the students rather than asking them to fill in a questionnaire, it is going to be very time consuming. It's going to take a lot of time. Also, if you're asking the question, you as the interviewer may affect the answers. So for example, if the head teacher was asking all the students, interviewer, sorry, put just in there, may affect the responses, the answers given by the students. So if, for example, you're sitting there in front of your head teacher and having to answer the question, because it's your head teacher, you might not give them the response you would if you were writing it down on a questionnaire. So that's one of the disadvantages of actually interviewing rather than filling in a questionnaire. Pilot surveys. Now, pilot surveys are basically a test survey. They ensure that the survey will work before investing any time or money into carrying out a full survey. Now, why? You're going to be asked in your exam, why carry out a pilot survey? Now, repeatedly looking at exam papers, these 4 answers are accepted. You'll often be asked just to give 2 reasons, but these 4 answers are what you need to quote, 2 of these. A pilot survey makes sure the survey gets relevant answers. It also makes sure that the questions are understood. It checks response rates, and it also checks the design, in particular the response boxes. So a pilot survey is a test survey. You will need to justify why people carry out pilot surveys. So this is an example here. Again, it's talking about Ashton Girls' School. Explains what it's about to do, but actually the context doesn't matter. It asks you to give 2 reasons why a pilot survey should be carried out. You need to state down any of the 2 reasons from the previous slide. Random sampling. Sometimes you'll be asked to define a random sample. This here at the top, on the first bullet point, is the common response to what is a random sample. A sample where every member, this bit's key, of the population has an equal chance of being chosen. So a random sample is a bit like names in a hat. All the names in a hat, everyone has an equal chance of being chosen. You will then be asked to describe how to take a random sample. There's 2 marks because there's 2 things you need to mention. 1, give every member of the population a number. Everyone needs to be identified by a number. Then, standard answer, use the random number button on your calculator to select your sample. Now, you could also use a random number table. Again, either one of those, but this is the common response given to how to carry out a random sample. Now, you may be given some random numbers and asked to select a random sample from a random number table. Really important. You will be told where to start and in which direction to go. You need to follow these instructions. Then, reject numbers that haven't been allocated to a member of the population. So if your population goes from 0 to 91 and 94 comes up, reject it because it hasn't been allocated to a member of the population. You must also reject any repeats. Okay, so let's take a look at an actual example involving a random sample table. First question, again, I said you're going to be asked this. What is meant by random sample? Using information on the previous table and previous slide, every item or every member of the population has an equal chance of selection. The key part there is equal chance. So every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. So here is an extract from a table of random numbers, starting from the first line in the 3rd column of the table with the number 84. You can see it's highlighted. Reading across the table, it's going across here to 20, then starting at 60. Write down 10 random numbers between 0 and 79. Really important from the table. First number, we see here 10. 7, 30, 39, 5. Next number, cross out. Too large. Next number, too large. Next number, too large. 07, repeat, cross out. 37, next number. 26. 04, next number, too large, cross out. 13, and lastly, 48. Checking there, you have 10 numbers, all between 0 and 49, and no repeats. We're then asked to explain how to use these random numbers to select a sample of 10 students from 80 students. Number 1, number the students 0 to 79. Just here we have up in the first part of the question. 2, for the second mark, choose those students corresponding to the random numbers above. So the students selected will be student number 10, 7, 30, etc. A further method for sampling is known as stratified sampling. Stratified sampling is sampling where each category is proportionally represented in the sample. So if we just take a look here at the table given, we have the table split into the categories for girls and boys and the different year groups. So if the head teacher of your school wanted to know what the students thought about the amount of homework you get, the food in the school canteen, instead of asking 2 boys from year 10, 2 boys from year 11, 2 from year 12, 2 girls from year 10, etc., this sampling would mean that each of the categories would be represented proportionally. So we can see here that in year 12, there's not as many students as there are in year 10. So we wouldn't be asking in the sample, there would be less year 12 boys than there would of year 10, because year 10 boys proportionally make up a larger part of the sample. So when stratifying, the number we have for each category will depend on the total number in each of the categories. Let's take a look at how this happens. Here shown on the screen is the method. First off, we must write each category as a fraction of the total population. Our population total here, by adding them up, is 800. So let's take, for example, the year 11 boys. So the fraction of this category of the total will be the number in the category divided by 800, the total. We must multiply this fraction by the total sample size to find the size of each category sample. Now you will be told what the sample size is. Maybe 50, 20, 100. Okay, so the sample size here, we must multiply. So for example, if the sample size was 50, we would multiply our fraction by 50. And we would get the answer using our calculator of 11.875. Obviously, we can't select to be in our sample 11.8 of a boy, so we must round to the nearest integer, the nearest whole number. We have 12. So there will be 12 boys in the sample. We would then repeat this process to find out how many of each of the other categories would be in the sample. This question usually asks for you to start to calculate the size of only 1 or 2 of the categories. So you need to apply this method to the particular category that you have been asked to find the size in the sample. So example number 5, the table shows the number of players in 2005. A stratified sample of 40 players was taken from the 386 players of this club. We're asked why a stratified sample was taken. Why do we take a stratified sample? So that the sample is representative of the different proportions in the sample. In the population. So the sample is representative of the different proportion in the population. We're then asked to work out the number of junior players. So looking here at our table, junior, 81. So we have 81 divided by our total, 386, multiplied by our sample size, 40, is equal to 8.39. Rounded to the nearest whole number, 8. So there will be 8 junior players in a sample of 40 when stratified. Having a look now at some different types of sampling beyond random and stratified. Here we have systematic sample. This is when we divide the population by the sample size to get a number. Now, whatever that number is, we then need to list the population. Choose a starting point at random. How would we choose a starting point at random? Use the calculator. And then we choose every nth person. So, for example, if our population is 1,000 and we want a sample size of 100 people. So in our school, we've got 1,000 students. Our sample size, we're only going to ask 100 people their opinion. So we divide this and we get 10. We list the population. We start at a random starting point between 1 and 9. And then we're going to choose every 10th person. So if we start on the 7th person, we're then going to choose the 17th person, the 27th person. And this is called systematic sampling. Cluster sampling. This is when the population is divided into small groups and then chooses a cluster randomly to form a sample. So population into groups, and then one group is chosen as the sample, and this is known as cluster sampling. Now, quota sampling is a really popular sampling used in market research, and this is where the sample is divided into subgroups. Whenever you see something related to gender, male or female, over a certain age, under a certain age, this is going to be quota sampling. And this is where each subgroup is given a quota, a limit. So for example, we could say we want 50% to be women and 50% to be men. We could say 25% of our sample must be under a particular age group, over, etc. And as I say, this is often used in market research. We also have convenience sampling, and this is simply when you ask the most easily questioned people. So if you want a sample size of 100, the first 100 people you can find, you ask. And this is called convenience sampling. So example number 6, a researcher wants to choose a random sample of 300 people from her town. She considers choosing the people that live near her house. Write down one advantage and one disadvantage in choosing this method for her sample. In this method of choosing her sample. An advantage. Well, if she's choosing people that live near her house, clearly this advantage is that it's a convenience. It's going to be easy. The advantage of this, she just needs to go to the people that live close as possible to her and ask them to be in her sample. Now, a disadvantage of that is it's unlikely to be representative. It may be biased because she might know the people, and as a result, unlikely to be representative of the population, of everyone in the town. Unlikely to be representative of the population. Now we're told that there are 30,000 people on the electoral register in her town. That's everyone living in the town who's eligible to vote. Describe how she should choose a systematic sample of 300 people. So, to be able to carry out a systematic sample, we must divide the population size 30,000, by the sample size. Dividing by the sample size, 300. And we get 100. Now, we must divide, as we say, the population size by the sample size to get this number. Now, this number is going to help us. So first, we must list the population. We then must choose a random starting point. So choose a random starting point. And this starting point we're going to be finding by using our calculator between 0 and 99 on the calculator. That's because we're looking for every 100th person. Once we've got our starting number, we will then select that person and every 100th name after. So, if the 53rd person gets picked, the next person is going to be 153, then 253, etc. So those steps there are really important for describing a systematic sample. In question 7, it states that a market research company wants to take a sample of 100 customers. The sample is to be taken by asking predetermined numbers of customers in different ages, genders, to fill in a questionnaire. Name a suitable sampling method. This is a quota. Quota sampling, because it's a predetermined number based on ages and genders. It's now time for you to have a go at the questions. So press pause on the video and complete as many questions as possible in the question booklet. Once you have finished, come back to the video, press play, and we will go through the answers together. Question number 1. A town council wants to know what people think about the council how the council uses the council tax. Really important. It will take a sample of all the people who pay council tax. Which of the following sampling frames would be most suitable? A list of names in a telephone directory, a list of all council tax payers, a list of residents of one street, or an electoral roll. Hopefully you got it from the clue in the way that I read the question. It's got to be a list of all the council taxpayers because it's to do with how the council uses the council tax. So it makes sense to be asking them what they think about it. Now the population of the town is very large. The council will take a sample of 1,000 people. And we're asked which of the following sampling methods is most suitable. Now, convenient sampling is not suitable, and neither is cluster sampling. In this case, systematic sampling is going to be the most suitable way to get a sample of 1,000 people to ask about the council tax. Question number 2. Here is a random number table. Michael wants to take a random sample of 6 people from a list of 60 people. He starts from the top left, here at the number 51, and works across the table row by row. Write down the set of numbers Michael could use. So we're looking at 60 people. So we're needing the people going from 0 to 60. So 51, first number, yes. Second number, 19, yes. Second number, 53, yes. The fourth number in the table we must cross out because it's too large. It's larger than 60. 38, yes. 63, no, too large. On to 9, yes. 93, too large. And 11. So no repeats there. We have 6 numbers for our sample of 6 people from the list of 60. We're then asked to explain how, this is about explaining how a random sample, how can Michael use these numbers to obtain his sample? So first off, and really important, he must number the people, that means all the people in the population 1 to 60. So every person has a number. Now, we have the 6 numbers here, the random numbers. You must then select the people with the numbers above. These people have randomly been selected to be part of this sample. So, in the list of 1 to 60, he will select the person who has 51 next to his name, 19 next to their name, etc. In question 3, Ashton Girls' School wants to take a sample of 100 of its students to find out what they think about compulsory games. We saw this question in the notes. However, the question is slightly different here. We're told that there are 5 year groups in its school. Each year group has the same number of students. The school wants the sample to be representative. So we need to think about which sampling technique is representative of the whole school. Describe how the school should select the sample. So here, if it's representative of the whole school, we have 5 year groups and each year group has the same number of students. So to be representative, the school must choose the same number from each year group. So by selecting the same number from each year group, it's ensuring that all of the year groups are in proportion. So out of the 100, there will be 20 students from each year group in the sample. 5 year groups, 5 times 20 make 100. Therefore, it will be representative of each one of the 5 year groups. Question number 4. A city council wishes to know what people think about the plan to build a new ring road. The council will carry out an opinion poll of residents' views. Write down one reason why the council should not take a census. Many reasons why we do not take a census. Too long, too costly, it's going to take a lot of money to be able to do this, too difficult to be able to ask every person their opinion. So any one of those reasons will get you the 1 mark allocated for this question. We're then asked to write down the population from which the council should take its sample. So with population, it wants to ask what the people think about the plan to build a new ring road. So the population, write down the population from which the council should take its sample. It needs every person who lives in the town. So the residents of the city. We see here city council up here. It's everyone, the residents who live in the city. The council will use a questionnaire. It will use closed questions. Write down one reason why. Why closed questions? Closed questions limit the amount of possible answers. Which make it easier to analyse. So by closing the question and only giving a few response boxes, it means that the amount of possible answers is limited and makes it easier to analyse. We're then told that one question suggested for the questionnaire was, do you agree with building a new ring road? Sorry, read that again. You do agree with building a new ring road, don't you? We're told that this is not a good way to find out what people think about the plan to build a new road. Write down one reason why. This is a leading question. It's biased and it assumes that the person agrees. It forces them to think that they agree. You do agree with building a new ring road, don't you? We're then asked to design a suitable question the council could use to find out what people think about the plan to build a new ring road. So we need to keep the question really, really simple, and we need to have response boxes. So we need to thought what people think about the plan. So something simple. Do you think a new ring road should be built? Now we need to make sure that we close this question by giving the response boxes. Yes, no, don't know. So really simple. Do you think a new ring road should be built? Yes, no, don't know. Question number 5. A market research company wants to find out the views of customers about a new supermarket that has just opened. Give 2 reasons why the company should take a sample rather than a census. Why a sample? Cheaper, easier, quicker, less data. Any of these 2 would be valid reasons. The market research company wants to take a sample of 100 customers. A sample is to be taken by asking predetermined numbers of customers of different ages and genders to fill in a questionnaire immediately. Predetermined numbers, different ages and genders. This is quota sampling. We're asked to write down an example of a closed question that could be used on this questionnaire. So we need to know the views about a new supermarket. So very simple, something along the lines of, do you like the new supermarket? So we want to ask people's views. Do you like the new supermarket? We must make sure we make this a closed question by giving the response boxes. Yes, no, don't know. Maybe someone hasn't been to the new supermarket. So very simple. Do you like the new supermarket? Yes, no, don't know. Okay, moving on now to part D. In part D, we're asked to give 2 reasons why a pilot survey, a pre-test, should be carried out. Now, looking back at the slides for the pilot survey, there's 4 different reasons you can put down here. You're asked to give 2, so 2 of these answers to get your marks. Make sure that the survey gets the relevant answers. It also makes sure that the questions are understood. It checks response rates. It also checks design. And this in particular is related to the response boxes. So any of those 2 reasons are valid reasons for running a pilot survey. One question on the questionnaire is, Do you agree that the goods are well laid out and easy to find? You're asked to discuss whether this is a suitably worded question for the questionnaire. Now, 2 marks are available, okay? First off, no. There's a number of reasons why this is not a suitably worded question. First off, it asks 2 questions together. Now, this will be confusing when people are responding. So 2 questions together. Do you agree that foods are well laid out and easy to find? So this is 2 questions together. This makes it confusing for the person responding. Secondly, there are no response boxes. So this is an open question. Also, it's biased. It's a leading question. Do you agree? It's forcing you to agree. So this here is not a suitable question. If we were needing to improve it, we would split the question to just ask 1 question, and we would give the person an option of agreeing and disagreeing. Question number 6. Storm Engineering employs 200 workers. Storm Engineering wishes to consult their workers about a new pension scheme. Give 1 advantage of taking a census, asking everyone rather than a sample. If we take a census, it will be unbiased. Why? Because all views represented. Every single person's views will be represented. It's going to use a questionnaire and they're going to use closed questions. Give 1 advantage of using closed questions on a questionnaire. So things you can write here, questions, answers are easy to understand. To understand. Also, the answers are easier to handle. Put in tables, interpret by having those response boxes. Before, Storm Engineering gives the questionnaire to all the workers, they're advised to do something to check that the questionnaire is suitable. What can we do to check that the questionnaire is suitable? Pilot survey. Also write down there, test survey, trial survey, pilot survey. 1 question suggested for the questionnaire was, do you agree that the proposed pension scheme should be compulsory? This question's leading. Do you agree? Rewrite this question so that it's not leading. You need to include response boxes. So you could just adapt this question. Do you agree or disagree? You could give people the option of disagreeing. Do you agree or disagree that the proposed pension scheme should be compulsory? Response boxes, agree. Second response box, disagree. Now, you might want to reword it and say something along the lines of should the proposed pension scheme be compulsory? Again, using the words that are in the question, just adapting them slightly. Should the proposed pension scheme be compulsory? We need some response boxes there. Yes, no, and then don't know. So this is an example of a good closed questions with response boxes. Question number 7. A company is planning a survey about the types of transport their workers use to get to the factory. Give 2 reasons why a pilot study should be carried out. So once again, you're looking at those any 4 reasons that we had before about a pilot survey. It makes sure the survey gets the relevant answers. It makes sure that the questions are understood. It checks the response rates. It checks the design. It checks the response boxes. Any of those 2 reasons for why a pilot study should be carried out. We're then told that Megan is going to stand outside the factory on one Monday morning. As the workers arrived, she'll ask them how they travelled to work. Give one reason why this will not give a random sample. So there are several things you could put here in relation to the fact that not all workers may come to work on a Monday morning. Maybe Monday will be their day off. Okay, so we don't know exactly whether they're going to be coming in. It could be biased because of this. Only one day. Maybe she needs to stand out every day for 7 days and ask them how they come into work. Okay, so something there or equivalent with the same idea for these 2 reasons, this one or this one. Only one reason is needed for the mark. We're then asked to describe how to take a random sample from the workers in the factory. Okay, so we're asking how to take the random sample. So this one here for 2 marks, the first point, really important. Every time we do a random sample, we must list all the workers. List all of them with a number. Then, using a random number table, a calculator, we need to generate the numbers. So generate random, remember this is a random sample, random numbers. And we can do this using a calculator or a table. Generate the random numbers, and then using these numbers, select these workers. So we need to list them, generate the random numbers, and these numbers will then tell us which workers we will select to be in the sample. The company records the distance each worker travels to work and the type of transport they use. Now, put a cross in the box to indicate whether each of the following is qualitative, words, discrete, integers. So numbers such as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Continuous, all numbers. So these are numbers which include numbers with decimal places. So let's have a look. The distance travelled to work. The distance travelled to work is going to be a number, but it will not be discrete. This number will be any number. It could be 2.5 miles, 2.473 miles. So this is a continuous type of data. And the type of transport, do they travel on bus, train, car, is qualitative because it involves words. Question number 8. A market research company is going to do a national, that's the whole country, opinion poll. They want to find out what people think about the European Union. Give 2 reasons why it's not a good idea to carry out a census. So those original reasons we spoke about a census, if they asked everyone in the country, it would take too long. So too long. It will also be too expensive to travel and to make sure that every single person responds. It's also going to be too expensive. It's also going to be difficult to be able to ask every person in the country in a quick amount of time. So they're the obvious reasons as to why a census is not a good way of asking about what people think. So the company is going to do a telephone poll. First, they will pick 10 towns at random. Then they'll pick 10 telephone numbers from the telephone book of each town. And then they're going to ring these 100 telephone numbers. So that's 10 telephone numbers from each one of the 10 towns. And then the people who answer will form the sample. We're asked to discuss whether this will form a satisfactory sample for the poll. Okay, this is not going to be satisfactory, and there are a number of reasons why. First off, the sample is too small. The population, the national, is every single person in the country, and they're only asking 100 people. This is too small. Secondly, they're picking 10 towns. What about the people who don't live in towns? So no rural, the people that live in the countryside, not in towns, no rural people asked. This is not fair. This is biased. This is not representative. Okay. Also, they're going to pick 10 telephone numbers. What if you don't have a telephone number? What if you just have a mobile and you have no landline? Again, this is making it biased. It's only selecting people who have a telephone number. So not everyone will have a landline. So because of this, it means that not everyone has an equal chance of being selected. And therefore, we can say that this will not form a satisfactory sample for the poll. Further information there, 2 of the questions suggested for the telephone poll are: A, do you think that the European Union is working well? Yes or no? B, what do you think of the European Union? Which question is the most suitable? A is the most suitable question. Why? Because it's a closed question. We've now come to the end of session 2. Please revise the list of subtopics here on the screen and replay the video for any sections that you would like to study again.